we are going to take away the mystery of instinctive shooting. All right, but before we talk about any instinctive shooting, any type of traditional archery, first we need to talk about anchoring. All right, anchoring is super important. There's a lot of different ways to anchor. The first way obviously would be my preference, and that's going to be pulling back to the same point every time. For me, it's with the thumb up or the thumb down with this finger in the corner of my mouth like Fred Bear. For some people it'd be like Howard Hill, right, with the three fingers right here. For some people it would be like Brady Ellison, where you'd be under here, or an early picture of Fred Bear, check that out. Or, yeah, there's as many ways to anchor as there is faces. So listen, no two faces are the same, no two ways of anchoring are the same. Find what works for you, as long as you can do it every single time, and as long as it is completely repeatable, that's what you want to do. Now, as far as, do you do three fingers under, or do you split finger, or do you do thumb release? If you're looking for Asian style thumb release, look at another video. I don't teach that style, I don't know it well enough, I can shoot it poorly, we're not going to learn it from me. But for the other two styles, I'm your man. So I prefer to shoot three fingers under for most traditional. I get the best accuracy out of that, and I'll show you why. When I'm three fingers under, it brings the arrow closer to my eye, right? So for me, depending on your anchor, brings the arrow closer to underneath my eye, and then I can look down the shaft more easily and see what my target is. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between instinctive archery and gap shooting, right? I mostly gap shoot, and instinctive archery is just like throwing a baseball, right? You throw a baseball and after a while you get good enough at it and it goes where you want it to go, which is awesome. The best archers out there can instinctively shoot, especially when you're shooting aerial targets or something quickly. Instinctive shooting is the way to go. Really, with instinctive shooting, you are seeing the arrow in your peripheral vision, and so it is somewhat of a mental gap shooting, but really with instinctive archery you need to focus, focus, focus on your target, come back and anchor like you normally would, and let it fly. Oh, that was a bullseye, not bad. So instinctive archery, there I split finger for that. Instinctive archery is just a matter of practice over and over and over. So gap shooting is best done by using the tip of your arrow, and that is why it is so important to have great anchoring, right? You must have the same size arrows, but when you draw back, you're seeing the tip of that arrow, and you're putting the tip of that arrow on your target each time, every time. Let's take a closer look at that. So when I'm gap shooting, right, I'm anchoring at exactly the same point every time. My hand and my form is perfect, and I can see the tip of my arrow. Now, it doesn't really matter if my arrow tip visually, right, when I'm looking down the arrow, if I can see it and it lines up perfectly. This would be called point on. This is the best, right? That for whatever certain distance, that's the best if you can get that. There are multiple ways to get that, through tuning your bow, through string walking, through tuning your nock. We'll get into some of that stuff later. But let's say you're at a guessed distance of about 20 yards, and you know, because of practice, and all of traditional archery takes massive amounts of practice, that at 20 yards you need to have your point right somewhere around down here, right? When you draw back, you see your point, and it looks like this underneath the target, and then it'll go right in the bullseye. That is gap shooting. It's the gap between where you see the tip and then when you release, where the actual impact point is. Gap shooting also works for windage, right? So let's say you're aiming up right in the center and all your arrows are hitting over here. Well, that's not a problem. Just aim off a little Kentucky windage style and shoot over here. That's not a great solution. You might want to instead either change the spine of your arrow, or let's say you've got a competition style bow, you can change the cushion of the button.